Good morning, good morning. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good morning, good morning to you. You. Good morning, good morning to you. You. Good morning. Good morning to you. You. Good morning. Good morning to you. And many more. Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Daring Dialogues. I'm your host today, Shantae Charles. This is Monday Motivation. I, first of all, want to start out by talking a little bit about my experience at the voting polls. As you know, here in the United States, we are in our time of early voting, and our election day is actually November 5th, but we are starting early voting for the states that have early voting. And I got a chance to vote early on Friday. When I went, it wasn't that much of a wait. It was probably, I think, the whole process of standing in line, presenting my ID, getting my ballot, and voting took about 20-25 minutes, somewhere around there. So the process wasn't really that difficult. I went on a Friday before 5 o'clock. So I think that was another factor in it. And then, of course, the voting booths were also open on this weekend. As we drove by, we saw lots and lots of people out voting. I will say this, when I was in line, no one was talking. No one was talking. No one was talking to each other. Um, no one had on political shirts. People just kind of, had either were getting off work or had gotten off work and were coming in to cast their vote. Now, I do know there are some places where people are getting very, very animated and fired up, and people are going to the booths with their shirts and stuff like that. We are in the United States. And so give me just a moment because I'm going to adjust my participant mode here. There we go. All right. There we go. All right. And so many of the people were just, regular, hardworking people that just came in and decided to vote. But I did notice that no one in our polling line was talking. No one was talking to each other. So that was something I did note. But again, the process went very, very smoothly. And I was out, in and out in about 20 to 25 minutes. So if your state allows early voting, I'm going to encourage you to participate in early voting. Now, an interesting thing happened to me as I was leaving the voting poll. I saw, um, I looked down, I was going to my car and I looked down and I saw a voter registration card. And clearly the person had probably already come in before me because it was in the parking lot and there was lots of feet stamps on this person's voter registration card. And so I picked the card up and I thought to myself, if someone had found my voter registration card, what would I want them to do with it, right? Um, I could have gone back in and I could have turned it into the election site people, but I don't know if they're responsible for getting a lost card back to you, right? So I looked at the card, and if you've never seen a voter registration card, it has your entire name on it, and it has your address on the card. And so I said, well, I'm not going to try to find this person. I'm just going to mail them back their card. But I also looked at the party affiliation, which was Republican. And then I also looked at when this person registered and how long they had been voting Republican. Now, those cards don't necessarily tell you if the person has switched party back and forth. It just tells you the date of the first time they registered. And on that person's card, they had been voting since 1964. Now, again, I don't know if they had been voting straight Republican since 1964. That wasn't my concern. I just thought about, man, this person has been engaged, at least in the voter registration process and in the process of voting since before I was born, 1964. And, I made mention of this on my social media post, and someone said, well, why don't you just, drop the person's card by their house? And I thought about it and I said, you know what? If we were not in 2024, if we had not already seen what happens when you accidentally pull someone's car door handle thinking it's your car, if we had not seen what happens when you arrive at the same address, wrong street, if we had not seen what happens when you go on someone's property and stand at their door or knock on their door and they shoot you through the door, then maybe I would have felt comfortable with returning that person's voter registration card to them in person. But no, this is 2024. You can't do something as innocent and as neighborly as returning somebody's voter registration card to them. Unfortunately, especially if it has Republican on the card. And that brings me to the fact that, yeah, when you see the R these days, it is associated with people who are not really thinking for the good of everybody. That's what it's come to be associated with. Martin Luther King, by the way, was a Republican. Frederick Douglass, by the way, was a Republican. But that's not the Republicans that we see today. And so, again, something as simple as wanting to deliver something or return something to somebody that they had lost tells me I'm not going anywhere near their property. I'm going to put it in the mail today, which is what I'm doing, and I'm going to address it to the person. And then the return address is going to be the voting site where they dropped it. I'm not putting my address on there as a return address either. Why? Because this is unfortunately 2024. And so we have to think and move a little bit differently than other people. And that's really the bottom line. That's what it is. So as I come to this Monday motivation, I also have to come to this Monday with the realization that there are some ways that Black people have to move differently in this society than other people. Because that person was so gung ho about, hey, you should go to this person's house and return it to them in person. It'll be great. And I was like, no, it won't be great because I have other things I have to worry about as a woman in this world, and number two, a Black woman in this world. So yeah, that was my thoughts on that. The other thing, we saw lots of rallies happening this weekend, and then we saw something like the Nazi meeting that happened in Madison Square Garden, I believe in the 1930s, went down this past weekend again with the Republicans. They thought it was a good idea to bring in a quote unquote comedian to make fun of Black people, to say that they carve watermelons, to say that Puerto Rico is a floating trash can. They thought that these things were actually funny. And shortly after that, you see all of these Puerto Rican celebrities, singers, actors coming out to condemn those words and throw their support and endorsement behind VP Harris for president. Now, I don't know if the Republican Party at this time is intentionally trying to lose the election, but that was just not a good idea to do. Many of these people before what happened this weekend had not said anything at all. They had not said anything at all publicly about who they were voting for. But when you came for them and you came for their territory, that was just not a good idea. I mean, who does that? 11, 10 days before the election. Who does that? Not a brilliant move. All right. So I don't know. I don't know. I think at this point they might be hustling backwards because you don't offend the people that you hope will vote for your um, representatives on the ballot. But that's exactly what they did. Um, and again, someone shared with me, they said it's almost like people have to um, hear their name inside of the insult or their culture or their ethnic group to hear their specific group being insulted before the light bulb comes on and they realize, oh, they're talking about me too. Yes, they have always been talking about you too, my friends. We look at the origins of our Constitution. It was set up for white land owning males, not even just all white males. Hello. It was set up for white land owning males. That means if you were white and poor, it also was not set up for you. You didn't have voting power if you didn't own land. So I don't know. Maybe we probably need to do a few more history lessons on why and how the Constitution was set up. Because there are a lot of people that don't seem to understand that they too were not included in the original documents. Let's look at our motivating word for today. Our motivating word for today, it is October 28th. The title is The Juice Man. A river can't rise beyond its source. What's in the seed determines the fruit. This quote is by T.M. Alexander, entrepreneur. And it reads, there was a strong man who traveled with a circus. One of his more memorable stunts was to take a lemon and squeeze every last drop of juice out of it. He would then offer $1,000 to anyone who could manage to squeeze as much as one additional drop from the fruit. He boasted about his feat from city to city, but no one was able to win the money. One day he came to a small town and pitched his offer. A small, frail woman stepped forward and accepted the challenge. She took the crushed lemon and squeezed several drops of juice from it. The man couldn't believe his eyes. How did you do it? He asked. The woman shrugged and said, my husband has been out of work for nearly a year. I do this all the time. When it comes to pushing ahead and using our talent, we must squeeze out every drop. When presented with the heroic challenge of carving out a better life, many who face barriers have managed to squeeze every drop from their ability. Think of how Marian Anderson became the first African American to perform at New York's Metropolitan Opera House. Charles Drew perfected blood plasma. John Baptiste du Sable established Chicago. Jackie Robinson, my family ancestry, shattered baseball's color line. Richard Allen founded the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Phyllis Wheatley became the first African American poet. Garrett Morgan created the traffic signal. Millie E. Hale built one of the first black hospitals in the country. Wild Bill Pickett became the king of the rodeo, and Crispus Attucks was the first man, a black and indigenous man, to die defending our nation's freedom from the Revolutionary War. These men and women exemplify the best that is in us. Our time and place is now, and we have the opportunity to do all the pioneering we've ever dreamed of. As in all other times, we need only courage and determination to squeeze out every last drop. So, proclaim to yourself today, I will use all my untapped abilities. Yeah. And again, when I think back to my early voting this past weekend and uh, finding that voter registration card on the ground and realizing that somebody had been engaged in the voting process since 1964, that let me know that hey, you're just getting started. You're a little youngin in this process of continuing on a legacy of enfranchising oneself. I also saw a video over the weekend. It was an older adult, and I think hers said 19. I can't remember, but she had a picture on her shirt that she had gotten made, and it said, "This is why I vote." And at the top, the picture was a copy of her poll tax receipt. This was a African American woman, and she was talking about the fact that for her, they had to pay a poll tax. They had to actually pay to vote. And many people back then were just kind of getting into the process of voting, but a lot of them didn't have the money to pay the poll tax. And she said for a lot of black people in her time, some of them didn't vote, even though they had got the right to vote, because they sometimes had to decide between whether they could pay the poll tax or whether they could have groceries for their family. And so she was standing at the polls to say, hey, we don't have to pay a poll tax anymore. But I'm a part of the generation that literally had to pay to vote. Yeah. So again, a lot of the things that I've sometimes heard people say to give excuse as to why they are sitting out voting, I think if you go back and you start looking at the history of voting, you start looking at the things that black people did go through and have to endure. You start looking at the fact that people who went door to door to help people get registered to vote, some of them didn't make it home because they were unalived for even trying to go out and help people register to vote. When you start to look at the bigger picture and put those things into perspective, it might make you change your mind about sitting out voting. Um, and so I hope that everyone who is eligible to vote, everyone who is able to vote, will go and participate in the process. Maybe you have never done it before, you never considered it, but I hope that you will register to vote and participate in the process at least one time. And if you decide, hey, I've participated in this process, I've seen what it's like to vote, and maybe I won't participate in the next election, fair. But at least you will have at least tried. You have at least gone through the process. You can at least be on the other side of it and say, hey, I did register to vote. I did look at the ballot. I did see what was on the agenda for my community. And this is the decision that I'm going to make moving forward. So I at least encourage people to try it, get involved. All right. As I close up today, I want to share with you some inspiring women throughout history. Now, these women are not in any particular order, but I'm going to share them with you. And maybe it's somebody you've never heard of before. These cards are from the Black History flashcards. You can check them out at urbanintellectuals.com. I'm looking and using volume 2, which is specifically about women. This first card is Torena Rarer. also known as Whaler. She was born sometime circa 1800 and she lived until June 5th, 1831. She was an Aboriginal guerrilla leader of Tasmania. She was kidnapped in her teens and sold into enslavement to sealers. She was intent on getting revenge against the British. Terranarera used her time in captivity to learn how to use firearms and how to speak English fluently. She escaped enslavement and returned to Tasmania as an Amazonian like warrior who unalived anyone who tried to come against her in power. Led both men and women Tasmanians in the Black War against the British colonists until her eventual capture and death from influenza in 1831. So when people um, think about the Tasmanians, or most people know about the Tasmanians from the cartoon, the Tasmanian Devil. These were a group of people that fought enslavement. Yeah, we know of them by the cartoon many times, but they were a real group of people who fought enslavement until they could no longer fight it. All right, here is another young lady. She is still living. One of the most inventive ice skaters of all time, Surya Bonali. Surya Bonali was born December 15th, 1973. She is an award winning French figure skater and PETA activist. She's the only Olympic figure skater to successfully land a backflip on one skating blade. She originally trained as a gymnast but switched to figure skating at the age of 11. Now, if she trained as a gymnast, she would have been the Simone Biles of her day for sure. She rose above many challenges in her career, including breaking both wrists during a fall and rupturing her Achilles tendon during practice. She was famous for her jumps and risky moves, as well as her bold and unusually colored costumes. She removed her silver medal during the ceremony at the 1994 World Championships because she believed she should have won first place instead of second. She became an American citizen in 2004 and is a proud vegetarian and advocate for animal rights. Surya Bonali. And I probably should say Bonali. All right. This is another historic figure who is still presently living. I learned about her through some family members and also through the charitable work and orphanage work that we support in Liberia. This is President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. President Johnson Sirleaf was the 24th president of Liberia. Before becoming president, she had a successful career in banking and treasury. She was the first woman elected as the chair of the Economic Community of West African States that promotes integration across 15 West African countries. She brought running water and electricity to parts of her country that had been without power for 15 years. As president, she enforced a free public school system, increased wages and pensions, and greatly reduced the country's debt. She was jointly awarded the 2011 Nobel Peace Prize along with another inspiring woman for me, Lema Gobawi, and Twako Carmen, for her dedication to women's rights. We got three more. Now, if you are Jamaican, you probably know of this woman. This is Nanny, Queen Nanny of the Maroons. She is a celebrated Jamaican war hero and community leader. She's a leader of the Jamaican Maroons who fought against British forces during the early 1700s. She was born in Ghana and escaped enslavement in Jamaica to form her own group, the Maroons, who lived in Nannytown. She organized many raids against the British and is credited with helping free over 1,000 enslaved persons. She worked as a powerful healer of both physical and spiritual illnesses in the area, thanks to her West African roots. Nanny's legacy lives on. She is remembered as one of the earliest leaders of enslaved resistance in the Americas. Now, I will be honest with you and tell you that I did not learn about Nanny of the Maroons in public school. Guess who else I didn't learn about in public school? I can give you a whole list of people I didn't learn about in public school. I didn't learn about Nat Turner, not in public school. On my own, yes, but I didn't learn about him in public school. Selah. All right, we have two more. This is Nandi, mother of King Shaka Zulu. I like this particular illustration. It's very nice. Nicely done. Mother of Shaka, the famous king of the Zulu people. Her son was born out of wedlock to Zulu king, and I'm probably going to chop this up, so let me make sure I say it right. Okay, she was born, her son was born out of wedlock to Zulu king Sinzanghakona. Sinzanghakona Kajama. Nandi was cruelly treated by other tribe members for becoming an unwed mother, but she remained strong and resilient. She raised the future king in strength and saved him and his sister from starvation during the 1802 Great Food Shortage by traveling great distances on foot to seek help. She was put in charge of the military once Shaka became king and governed in his place while he was away. She helped her son grow his kingdom and enact compromises with other kingdoms through peaceful non-violence. And Queen Nzinga. There's been a recent documentary on her, I believe, either on Netflix or Amazon, one of the other. She was a 17th century queen of the Bundu people in Angola. I want to pronounce the M because America, but you're not supposed to pronounce the M. Queen of the Bundu people in Angola, best remembered for her resistance against the Portuguese and setting her people free from enslavement. In 1621, represented her kingdom in a meeting with the Portuguese, in which she had one of her male servants get down on his hands and knees to be her seat, in response to the Portuguese governor only bringing one chair to the meeting to make her feel inferior and sit on the ground. She negotiated a short-lived period of peace with the Portuguese. She fought against the Portuguese in a 3-decade war while growing her kingdom into a commercial state. She aligned with the Dutch and personally led troops into battle until finally reaching a peace treaty with the Portuguese. She spent the rest of her reign helping former slaves restructure their lives. Queen Nzinga. Now, as we close today, imagine you as a parent investing in a deck like this with 52 powerful women from all around the world. You could hand your child one a week for them to learn, and they could learn in a year 52 important, powerful women from around the world. You wouldn't have to wait on the schools to teach. You wouldn't have to say, oh, I just got to come up with this difficult curriculum in order to teach my children. No, you just go to urbanintellectuals.com, order a deck, and get to teaching. Just a little teacher tip right there for you. All right. I hope that you have enjoyed today's Monday Motivation. I hope you've learned something or learned about someone that you didn't know before. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host today, Shantae Charles. I want to thank you again for your time and attention. Try to be like the woman today who who squeezed every bit of juice out of that lemon so that she could support and provide for her family. She was challenged, but she managed to get it done. And as the author challenged us today to make sure that we are squeezing out all of the energy, all of the benefit of who we are in our life, make sure that we are getting it out there. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so continue to go out and be light. I am going to hop over to Instagram. We are there now live. And if you'd like to join us for the talk back, or if you would like to share something that's been inspiring to you, please join us over there. The IG handle is at Daring Dialogues, all one word. Again, thank you for your time and attention. Be well, and most importantly, be light.